Tonight, the valley does not feel as distant. It feels closer. Closer than it has before. If you have traveled through the first 3 parts, you may sense it now. That quiet pressure in the stillness. The wilderness has been patient, watching, waiting, holding its breath. But patience does not last forever. Welcome back to the 3 Rivers country. If this is your first time here, you have arrived at a turning point. You do not need to know everything that came before. You do not need to remember every detail. Just listen, because the valley speaks in atmosphere, not in noise. Before we continue, take one slow breath in and gently release it. Let your shoulders fall heavy. Let your jaw soften. Let your thoughts drift further away. There is nothing you need to prepare for tomorrow. Nothing you need to analyze. Nothing you need to carry with you. Just the sound of the river. Just the rhythm of the words. Just the slow unfolding of the night. In part 4, the silence begins to change. Not loudly, not suddenly, but undeniably. What has remained distant is drawing nearer. What has remained uncertain is finding direction. And the valley is no longer only watching. So allow yourself to sink deeper into the stillness. If sleep comes early tonight, that is perfectly fine. Because this story is here to quiet your mind, to slow your thoughts, and to guide you gently into rest. Now, we return to the Valley of Silent Men by James Oliver Code. Waited until we were alone to ask you certain things, for I still have something of courtesy left in me. If you have not, what is your game? What has brought about the change in you? Is it his right hand clenched hard as a rock as he leaned toward Kedsty? Is it because of the girl hiding up at your bungalow, Kedsty? Even in that moment, when he had the desire to strike the man before him, it was impossible for him not to admire the stone-like invulnerability of Kedsty. He had never heard of another man calling Kedsty scoundrel or dishonest, and yet, except that his face burned mortally red, the inspector was as impassively calm as ever. Even Kent's intimation that he was playing a game, and his direct accusation that he was keeping Maretra Dison in hiding at his bungalow, seemed to have no disturbing effect on him. For a space, he looked at Kent, as if measuring the poise of the other's mind. When he spoke, it was in a voice so quiet and calm that Kent stared at him in amazement. "I do not blame you, Kent," he said. "I do not blame you for calling me a scoundrel, or anything else you want to. I think I should do the same if I were in your place. You think it is incredible, because of our previous association, that I should not make every effort to save you. I would, if I thought you were innocent, but I do not. I believe you are guilty. I cannot see where there is a loophole in the evidence against you, given in your own confession. Why, man, even if I could help to prove innocent of killing John Barclay," he paused, "and Daphne Sivan. Why, man, even if I could help to prove ye innocent of killing John Barclay," he paused. "Even if I did that," he went on, "you would still have 20 years of prison ahead of you. For the worst kind of perjury on the face of the earth, perjury committed at a time when you thought you were dying. You are guilty, Kent. Not for each, if not of one thing, then of the other. I am not playing a game, and as for the girl, there is no girl at my bungalow." He turned to the door, and Kent made no effort to stop him. Words came to his lips and died there, and for a space, after Kedsty had gone, he stared out into the green forest world beyond his window, seeing nothing. Inspector Kedsty, quietly and calmly, had spoken words that sent his hopes crashing in ruin about him. For even if he escaped a hangman, he was still a criminal of the worst sort, perhaps next to the man who kills. He proved that he had not killed John Barclay. He would convict himself at the same time of having made solemn oath to a lie on what he supposed was his deathbed, and for that, possible 20 years in the Edmonton penitentiary. At best, he could not expect less than 10 years, 20 years in prison, that, or harm. The sweat broke out on his face. He did not curse Kedsty now. His anger was gone. Kedsty had seen all the time what he, like a fool, had not thought of. No matter how the inspector might feel in that deeply buried heart of his, he could not do otherwise than he was doing. He, James Kent, who hated a lie above all the things on the earth, was kin as Keys, the blackest liar of all, a man who lied when he was dying, and for that lie there was a great punishment. The law saw with its own eyes. It was a single-track affair, narrow-visioned, caring nothing for what was to the right or the left. It would tolerate no excuse which he might find for himself. He had lied to save a human life, but that life the law itself had wanted. So he had both robbed and outraged the law, even though a miracle saved him, the greatest penalty of all. The weight of the thing crushed him. It was as if, for the first time, a window had opened for him, and he saw what Kedsty had seen. And then, as the minutes passed, the fighting spirit in him rose again. He was not of the sort to go under easily. Personal danger had always stirred him to his greatest depths, and he had never confronted a danger greater than this he was facing now. It was not a matter of leaping quickly, and on the spur of the moment. For 10 years his training had been that of a hunter of men, and the psychology of the manhunt had been his strong point. Always, in seeking his quarry, he had tried first to bring himself into a mental sympathy and understanding with that quarry, to analyze what an outlaw would do under certain conditions and with certain environments and racial inheritances behind him, was to Kent the premier move in the thrilling game. He had evolved rules of great importance for himself, but always he had worked them out from the vantage point of the huntsman. Now he began to turn them around. He, James Kent, was no longer the hunter, but the hunted, and all the tricks which he had mastered must now be worked the other way. His woodcraft, his cunning, the fine points he had learned of the game of one against one would avail him but little when it came to the witness chair and a trial. The open window was his first inspiration. Adventure had been the blood of his life, and out there, behind the green forests, rolling away like the billows of an ocean, lay the greatest adventure of all. Once in those beloved forests, covering almost the half of a continent, he would be willing to die if the world beat him. He could see himself playing the game of the hunted, as no other man had ever played it before. Let him once have his guns and his freedom, with all that world waiting for him. Eagerness. He rolled sideways from his bed and partly balanced himself on his feet. The effort made him dizzy. He doubted if he could have walked 100 yards after climbing through the window. Instantly, another thought leaped into his brain. His head was clearing. He swayed across the room and back again. The first time he had been on his feet since the half-breed's bullet had laid him out. He would fool Cardigan. He would fool Kedsty. As he recovered his strength, he would keep it to himself. He would play sick man to the limit, and then some night he would take advantage of the open window. The thought thrilled him as no other thing in the world had ever thrilled him before. For the first time, he sensed the vast difference between the hunter and the hunted, between the man who played the game of life and death alone, and the one who played it with the law and all its might behind him. To hunt was thrilling. To be hunted was more thrilling. Every nerve in his body tingled. A different kind of fire burned in his brain. He was the creature who was at bay. The other fellow was the hunter now. He went back to the window and leaned far out. He looked at the forest and saw it with new eyes. The gleam of the slowly moving river held a meaning for him that it had never held before. Dr. Cardigan, seeing him then, would have sworn the fever had returned. His eyes held a slumbering fire. His face was flushed. In these moments Kent did not see death. He was not visioning the iron bars of a prison. His blood pulsed only to the stir of that greatest of all adventures which lay ahead of him. He, the best man-hunter in 2,000 miles of wilderness, would beat the hunters themselves. The hound had turned fox, and that fox knew the tricks of both the hunter and the hunted. He would win. A world beckoned to him, and he would reach the heart of that world. Pity ever began to flash through his mind. Memory, the places where he could find safety in freedom for all time. No man in all the Northland knew its out-of-the-way corners better than he, its unmapped and unexplored places, the far and mysterious patches of terra incognita, where the sun still rose and set without permission for the law, and a god laughed, as in the days when prehistoric monsters fed from the top of trees no taller than themselves. Once through that window with the strength to travel, and the law might seek him for 100 years without profit to itself. It was not bravado in his blood that stirred these thoughts. It was not panic or an unsound excitement. He was measuring things even as he visioned them. He would go downriver way toward the Arctic, and he would find Maretta Radisson. Yes, even though she lived at barracks at Fort Simpson, he would find her. And after that, the question blurred all other questions in his mind. There were many answers to it. Knowing that it would be fatal to his scheme if he were found on his feet, he returned to his bed. The flush of his exertion and excitement was still in his face when Dr. Cardigan came half an hour later. Within the next few minutes, he put Cardigan more at his ease than he had been during the preceding day and night. It was, after all, an error, which made him happier the more he thought about it, he told the surgeon. He admitted that at first, the discovery that he was going to live had horrified him, but now the whole thing bore a different aspect for him. As soon as he was sufficiently strong, he would begin gathering the evidences for his alibi, and he was confident of proving himself innocent of young Barclay's murder. He anticipated 10 years in the Edmonton Penitentiary, but what were 10 years there as compared with 40 or 50 under the sod? He wrung Cardigan's hand. He thanked him for the splendid care he had given him. It was he, Cardigan, who had saved him from the grave, he said. And Cardigan grew younger under his eyes. I thought you would look at it differently, Kent, he said, drawing in a deep breath. My God, when I found I had made that mistake, you figured you were handing me off to the hangman, smiled Kent. It is true. I should not have made that confession, old man, if I had not rated you right next to God Almighty when it came to telling whether a man was going to live or die. But we all make slips. I have made 'em, and you have got no apology to make. I may ask you to send me good cigars now and then while I am in retirement at Edmonton, and I shall probably insist that you come to smoke with me occasionally and tell me the news of the rivers. But I'm afraid, old chap, that I'm going to worry you a bit more here. I feel queer today, queer inside me. Now, it would be a topping joke if some other complication should set in and fool us all again, would not it? He could see the impression he was making on Cardigan. Again, his faith in the psychology of the mind found its absolute verification. Cardigan, lifted unexpectedly out of the slough of despond by the very man whom he expected to condemn him, became from that moment, in the face of the mental reaction, almost hypersympathetic. When finally he left the room, Kent was inwardly rejoicing, for Cardigan had told him it would be some time before he was strong enough to stand on his feet. He did not see Mercer all the rest of that day. It was Cardigan who personally brought his dinner and his supper and attended him last at night. He asked not to be interrupted again, as he felt that he wanted to sleep. There was a guard outside his door now. Cardigan scowled when he volunteered this information. It was sheer nonsense in Kedsty, taking such silly precaution, but he would give the guard rubber-soled shoes and insist that he make no sound that would disturb him. Kent thanked him and grinned exultantly when he was gone. He waited until his watch told him it was 10 o'clock before he began the exercise which he had prescribed for himself. Noiselessly, he rolled out of bed. There was no sensation of dizziness when he stood on his feet this time. His head was as clear as a bell. He began experimenting by inhaling deeper and still deeper breaths, and by straightening his chest. There was no pain, as he had expected there would be. He felt like crying out in his joy. One after the other, he stretched up his arms. He bent over until the tips of his fingers touched the floor. He crooked his knees, leaned from side to side, changed from one attitude to another, amazed at the strength and elasticity of his body. 20 times before he returned to his bed. He walked back and forth across his room. He was sleepless. Lying with his back to the pillows, he looked out into the starlight, watching for the first glow of the moon and listening again to the owls that had nested in the lightning-shriven tree. An hour later, he resumed his exercise. He was on his feet when, through his window, he heard the sound of approaching voices and then of running feet. A moment later, someone was pounding at a door, and a loud voice shouted for Dr. Cardigan. Kent drew cautiously nearer the window. The moon had risen, and he saw figures approaching, slowly, as if weighted under a burden. Before they turned out of his vision, he made out 2 men bearing some heavy object between them. Then came the opening of a door, other voices, and after that, an interval of quiet. He returned to his bed, wondering who the new patient could be. He was breathing easier after his exertion. The fact that he was feeling keenly alive and that the thickening in his chest was disappearing flushed him with elation. An unbounded optimism possessed him. It was late when he fell asleep, and he slept late. It was Mercer's entrance into his room that roused him. He came in softly, closed the door softly, yet Kent heard him. The moment he pulled himself up, he knew that Mercer had a report to make, and he also saw that something upsetting had happened to him. Mercer was a bit excited. "I beg pardon for waking you, sir," he said, leaning close over Kent, as though fearing the guard might be listening at the door. The Indian. "Yes, sir. Muy, sir. I am quite upset over it, Mr. Kent. He told me early last evening that he had found the scow on which the girl was going downriver. He said it was hidden in Kim's Bayou." Kim's Bayou? That was a good hiding place, Mercer. A very good place of concealment indeed, sir. As soon as it was dark, Muy returned to watch. What happened to him I have not fully discovered, sir, but it must have been near midnight when he staggered up to Crossan's place, bleeding and half out of his senses. They brought him here, and I watched over him most of the night. He says the girl went aboard the scow, and that the scow started downriver. That much I learned, sir. But all the rest he mumbles, in a tongue I cannot understand. Crossan says it is Cree, and that old Muy believes devils jumped on him with clubs down at Kim's Bayou. Of course they must have been men. I do not believe in Muy's devils, sir. Nor I, said Kent, the blood stirring strangely in his veins. Mercer, it simply means there was someone cleverer than old Muy watching that trail. With a curiously tense face, Mercer was looking cautiously toward the door. Then he leaned still lower over Kent, viewing his mumblings. When I was alone with him, I heard him speak a name, sir, 6 times, sir, and it was Kedsty. Kent's fingers gripped the young Englishman's hand. You heard that, Mercer. I am sure I could not have been mistaken, sir. It was repeated a number of times. Kent fell back against his pillows. His mind was working swiftly. He knew that behind an effort to appear calm, Mercer was uneasy over what had happened. We must not let this get out, Mercer, he said. If Muy should be badly hurt, should die, for instance, and it was discovered that you and he knew he had gone far enough to give effect to his words. He did not even look at Mercer. Watch him closely, old man, and report to me everything that happens. Find out more about Kedsty, if you can. I shall advise you how to act. It is rather ticklish, you know, for you. And he smiled at Mercer. I am unusually hungry this morning. Add another egg, will you, Mercer? 3 instead of 2, and a couple of extra slices of toast. And do not let anyone know that my appetite is improving. It may be best for both of us, especially if Mui should happen to die. Understand, old man? I think I do, sir, replied Mercer, paling at the grimly smiling thing he saw in Kent's eyes. I shall do as you say, sir. When he had gone, Kent knew that he had accurately measured his man. True to a certain type, Mercer would do a great deal for $50. Undercover, in the open, he was a coward, and Kent knew the value of such a man under certain conditions. The present was one of those conditions. From this hour, Mercer would be a priceless asset to his scheme for personal salvation. Chapter 9. That morning, Kent ate breakfast that would have amazed Dr. Cardigan and would have roused a greater caution in Inspector Kedsty had he known of it. While eating, he strengthened the bonds already welded between himself and Mercer. He feigned great uneasiness over the condition of Mui, who he knew was not fatally hurt, because Mercer had told him there wasn't no fracture. But if he should happen to die, he told Mercer, it would mean something pretty bad for them if their part in the affair leaked out. As for himself, it would make little difference, as he wasn't bad anyway, but he did not want to see a good friend get into trouble on his account. Mercer was impressed. He saw himself an instrument in a possible murder affair, and the thought terrified him. Even at best, Kent told him, they had given and taken bribes, fact that would go hard with them, unless Mui kept his mouth shut. And if the Indian knew anything out of the way about Kedsty, it was mighty important that he, Mercer, get hold of it, for it might prove a trump card with them in the event of a showdown with the Inspector of Police. As a matter of form, Mercer took his temperature. It was perfectly normal, but it was easy for Kent to persuade a notation on the chart a degree above. Better keep them thinking I'm still pretty sick, he assured Mercer. They will not suspect there is anything between us then. Mercer was so much in sympathy with the idea that he suggested adding another half degree. It was a splendid day for Kent. He could feel himself growing stronger with each hour that passed. Yet not once during the day did he get out of his bed, fearing that he might be discovered. Cardigan visited him twice, and had no suspicion of Mercer's temperature chart. He dressed his wound, which was healing fast. It was the fever which depressed him. There must be, he said, some internal disarrangement which would soon clear itself up. Otherwise, there seemed to be no very great reason why Kent should not get on his feet. He smiled apologetically. Seems queer to say that, when a little while ago I was telling you it was time to die, he said. That night, after 10 o'clock, Kent went through his setting up exercises 4 times. He marveled even more than the preceding night at the swiftness with which his strength was returning. 6 times the little devils of eagerness working in his blood prompted him to take to the window at once. For 3 days and nights thereafter, he kept his secret and added to his strength. Dr. Cardigan came in to see him at intervals, and Father Leon visited him regularly every afternoon. Mercer was his most frequent visitor. On the 3rd day, 2 things happened to create a little excitement. Dr. Cardigan left on a 4-day journey to a settlement 50 miles south, leaving Mercer in charge, and Mui came suddenly out of fever into his normal senses again. The first event filled Kent with joy. With Cardigan out of the way, there would be no immediate danger of the discovery that he was no longer a sick man. It was the recovery of Mui from the thumping he had received about the head had delighted Mercer. He was exultant. With the quick reaction of his kind, he gloated over the fact before Kent. He let it be known. He was no longer afraid. From the moment Mui was out of danger, his attitude was such that more than once Kent would have taken keen pleasure in kicking him from the room. Also, from the hour he was safely in charge of Dr. Cardigan's place, Mercer began to swell with importance. Kent saw the new danger and began to humor him. He flattered him. He assured him that it was a burning shame Cardigan had not taken him into partnership. He deserved it. And in justice to himself, Mercer should demand the partnership when Cardigan returned. He, Kent, would talk to Father Leon about it, and the missioner would spread the gospel of what ought to be among others who were influential at the landing. For 2 days he played with Mercer as an angler plays with a treacherous fish. He tried to get Mercer to discover more about Mui's reference to Kedsty, but the old Indian had shot up like a clam. He was frightened when I told him he had said things about the inspector, Mercer reported. He disavowed everything. He shook his head. No. He had not seen Kedsty. He knew nothing about him. I can do nothing with him, Kent. He had dropped his sirs, also his servant-like servility. He helped to smoke Kent's cigars with the intimacy of proprietorship, and with offensive freedom called him Kent. He spoke of the inspector as Kedsty, and of Father Leon as the little preacher. He swelled perceptibly, and Kent knew that each hour of that swelling added to his own danger. He believed that Mercer was talking. Several times a day he heard him in conversation with the guard, and not infrequently Mercer went down to the landing, twirling a little reed cane that he had not dared to use before. He began to drop opinions and information to Kent in a superior sort of way. On the 4th day, Word came that Dr. Cardigan would not return for another 48 hours, and with unblushing conceit, Mercer intimated that when he did return, he would find big changes. Then it was that in the stupidity of his egotism, he said, "Kedsty has taken a great fancy to me, Kent. He's a square old top when you take him right. Hand me over this afternoon, and we smoked a cigar together. When I told him that I looked in at your window last night and saw you going through a lot of exercises, he jumped up as if someone had stuck a pin in him. Why, I thought he was sick, bad," he said, and I let him know there were better ways of making a sick man well than cardigans. "Give them plenty to eat," I said. "Let him live normal," I argued. "Look at Kent, for instance," I told him. "He's been eating like a bear for a week, and he can turn somersaults this minute." I knew it would be a bit of a surprise for him that I should do what Cardigan could not do. He walked back and forth, black as a hat, thinking of Cardigan, I suppose. Then he called in that Pelly chap and gave him something, which he wrote on a piece of paper. After that he shook hands with me, slapped me on the shoulder most intimately, and gave me another cigar. He is a keen old blade, Kent. He does not need more than one pair of eyes to see what I have done since Cardigan went away. If ever Kent's hands had itched to get at the throat of a human being, the yearning convulsed his fingers now. At the moment when he was about to act, Mercer had betrayed him to Kedsty. He turned his face away so that Mercer could not see what was in his eyes. Under his body he concealed his clenched hands. Within himself he fought against the insane desire that was raging in his blood, the desire to leap on Mercer and kill him. If Cardigan had reported his condition to Kedsty, it would have been different. He would have accepted the report as a matter of honorable necessity on Cardigan's part. But Mercer, a toad blown up by his own wind, consummate fiend who would sell his best friend, a fool, an ass. For a space he held himself rigid as a stone, his face turned away from Mercer. His better sense won. He knew that his last chance depended upon his coolness now, and Mercer unwittingly helped him to win by slyly pocketing a couple of his cigars and leaving the room. For a minute or two Kent heard him talking to the guard outside the door. He sat up then. It was 5 o'clock. How long ago was it that Mercer had seen Kedsty? What was the order that the inspector had written on a sheet of paper for Constable Pelly? Was it simply that he should be more closely watched, or was it a command to move him to one of the cells close to the detachment office? If it was the latter, all his hopes and plans were destroyed. His mind flew to those cells. The landing had no jail, not even a guardhouse, though the members of the force sometimes spoke of the cells just behind Inspector Kedsty's office by that name. The cells were of cement, and Kent himself had helped to plan them. The irony of the thing did not strike him just then. He was recalling the fact that no prisoner had ever escaped from those cement cells. If no action were taken before 6 o'clock, he was sure that it would be postponed until the following morning. It was possible that Ketzky's order was for Pelly to prepare a cell for him. Deep in his soul, he prayed fervently that it was only a matter of preparation. If they would give him one more night, just one. His watch tinkled, the half hour, then 6:15, then 6. His blood ran feverishly, in spite of the fact that he possessed the reputation of being the coolest man in Devonshire. He lighted his last cigar and smoked it slowly to cover the suspense which he feared revealed itself in his face should anyone come into his room. His supper was due at 7. At 8 it would begin to get dusk. The moon was rising later each night, and it would not appear over the forests until after 11. He would go through his window at 10 o'clock. His mind worked swiftly and surely as to the method of his first night's flight. There were always a number of boats down at Crossham's place. He would start in one of these, and by the time Mercer discovered he was gone, he would be 40 miles on his way to freedom. Then he would set his boat adrift, or hide it, and start cross-country until his trail was lost. Somewhere, and in some way, he would find both guns and food. It was fortunate that he had not given Mercer the other $50 under his pillow. At 7, Mercer came with his supper. A little gleam of disappointment shot into his pale eyes when he found the last cigar gone from the box. Kent saw the expression and tried to grin good-humoredly. "I'm going to have Father Leon bring me up another box in the morning, Mercer," he said. "That is, if I can get hold of him." "You probably can," snapped Mercer. "He does not live far from barracks, and that is where you are going. I have got orders to have you ready to move from the morning." Kent's blood seemed for an instant to flash into living flame. He drank a part of his cup of coffee and said then, with a shrug of his shoulders, "I am glad of it, Mercer. I am anxious to have the thing over. The sooner they get me down there, the quicker they will take action. And I am not afraid, not a bit of it. I am bound to win. There is not a chance in 100 that they can convict me." And he added, "And I am going to have a box of cigars sent up to you, Mercer. I am grateful to you for the splendid treatment you have given me." No sooner had Mercer gone with the supper things than Kent's knotted fist shook itself fiercely in the direction of the door. "My God, how I would like to have you out in the woods, alone, for just 1 hour," he whispered. 8 o'clock came, and 9. 2 or 3 times he heard voices in the hall, probably Mercer talking with the guard. Once he thought he heard a rumble of thunder, and his heart throbbed joyously. Never had he welcomed a storm as he would have welcomed it tonight, that the skies remained clear. Not only that, but the stars, as they began to appear, seemed to him more brilliant than he had ever seen them before. And it was very still. The rattle of a scow chain came up to him from the river, as though it were only 100 yards away. He knew that it was one of Moy's dogs. He heard it howling over near the sawmill. The owls flitting past his window seemed to click their beaks more loudly than last night. A dozen times he fancied he could hear the rippling voice of the river that very soon was to carry him on toward freedom. The river, Every dream and aspiration found its voice for him in that river now. Down Maret, Radisson had gone, and somewhere along it, or on the river beyond, the third river still beyond that, he would find her. In the long, tense wait between the hours of 9 and 10, he brought the girl back into his room again. He recalled every gesture she had made, every word she had spoken. He felt the thrill of her hand on his forehead, her kiss, and in his brain and now the valley grows still once more, but this stillness is no longer the same. It carries weight. What has been building through quiet glances, through careful steps, through unspoken understanding, has begun to take shape, not loudly, not suddenly, but unmistakably. If you are still awake, you may feel it. The air feels thicker, the silence feels closer. Something has crossed an invisible line. And once a line is crossed in the wilderness, there is no returning to what was before. The Three Rivers country has been patient. It has watched every movement. It has listened to every breath. But valleys do not stay silent forever. In part 5, the waiting ends. What has been forming beneath the surface will no longer remain hidden. What has been restrained may step forward, and the quiet strength that has carried this story may finally reveal its full weight. But not tonight. Tonight, you let the wind soften again. Let the tension dissolve into distance. Let the unanswered questions drift away like mist over water. There is nothing you need to hold on to, nothing you need to solve. Nothing you need to anticipate. The valley will wait for you. And when you return, the next chapter will be ready. Until then, breathe slowly. Let your body grow heavier. Let the wilderness fade into dream. Sleep peacefully. And I will meet you again where the silence no longer hides.